Live from our nation's capital, still the occupied nation's capital. You're in the war room. It's Monday, the 8th of February, year of our Lord, 2021. Want to go now to, we're so jammed in this show today, can't do cold opens. Want to go to, we got Boris, Epshteyn. I've got Posobiec and Raheem both in studio. So much news breaking today that we want to get to. Boris, walk us through the second trial of the century is about to start. And President Trump, the 45th president of the United States, just put out a statement saying he thanked the bipartisan nature of the Senate today. Explain to us exactly it's not the normal fire-breathing tweets we're used to seeing. What is going on here? What's happened today? What's the structure of this thing? And what does this statement from the president mean?
I think what you're seeing, Steve, good to be with you. Always great to be with a MAGA brain trust. That is the War Room. Jack, Raheem, great to be with you, gentlemen. Here's what's going on. There's now a sense that this is going to be a week-long, if that, maybe a little longer, trial, and the president is expressing, I think, his optimism about that. Now, the worry that I have is that the Democrats are going to use this week to pile on and hammer the president, the 45th and hopefully 47th president of the United States, to hammer him over and over again with these lies about incitement, which never happened, with this claim that any discussion of voter fraud, election fraud was, quote unquote, the big lie. So that we know where the Democrats are coming from. They're coming hot. They're coming strong. They're going to attack President Trump with everything they have. And there's all this, well, maybe it's a positive that Schumer doesn't want witnesses. Well, you ever thought that maybe he doesn't want witnesses because those witnesses will be cross-examined and it would be difficult to have witnesses up there to actually make the Democrats' legal points? It's easy to make emotional points. You can go out there and cry like Rashida Tlaib did last week. But this is a trial. You have to make legal points. And we all know the Democrats have none.
They wrote the initial complaint like a TV script. You and I talked about this. They're now talking about some epic video they put together that's going to be essentially their major piece of, I guess, of evidence of what the narrative they're going to lay out. What do you know? Is this something that MSNBC produced? Is this something you could see on MSNBC? What have they got in store? And what are they trying to do? This is just an emotional beatdown of President Trump and MAGA. Got Jake Tapper calling the MAGA forces a terrorist mob.
Well, Jake Tapper is a total loser, and everyone's known that. And he's a weak personality, weak human being. And Jake Tapper sits in his ivory tower and he casts aspersions. He's the one one of the people using the term "the big lie" while he fathoms himself somehow this big protector of the Jewish people. But he's Jewish and using a term coined by Adolf Hitler. So Jake Tapper knows nothing about anything. And if you have him now attacking the MAGA movement, you know how deeply under the skin of the left it is. And in terms of this video, we saw a preview of the video, Steve. That was in the MSNBC special, about a week and a half ago now, maybe a little longer, where I was the only pro-President Trump voice. And what was in the video? The video was spliced up statements from President Trump meant to sound like they were stated at the same time, like they were part of one speech. That's what it was. So it was completely manufactured. It was exactly what the left claims that the Trump organization, the Trump campaign, the Trump White House did, but they're doing it to attack President Trump. So that's what I think it'll be. It'll be sort of like a cold open reel from Joanne Reed's show or Ari Melber's show or Lawrence O'Donnell's show on MSNBC. This is the Democrats playing to their base, because we all know that the MAGA movement is all with President Trump. Anybody who's left in the middle doesn't want a charade. They care about the 11,000 jobs cost by the cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline. By the way, great job by Peter Doocy today, continuing to press the hapless Jen Psaki up there in the briefing room. That's what whoever's left in the middle cares about, and it's just the rabid base of the left, the marginalized base of the left that cares about this, that wants the resistance to have their pièce de résistance to attack President Trump. It's a joke, but it's to be taken seriously. We have to fight against it on all the three vectors I continue to talk about. The fact that it's unconstitutional, the fact that there was no incitement whatsoever. President Trump said march peacefully and patriotically, and the fact that there was real, true voter fraud, election fraud throughout the country. And you know how we know there was? Even Mark Elias is claiming voter fraud on the other side. He said that there was some sort of misdoings of the machine, that the machines malfunctioned, or that there was fraud with the machines in the 22nd district of New York. So the Democrats are claiming fraud, and we know if they're there, it definitely happened.
So walk people through how many opening arguments going to be, how long, when does it actually start? What are any additional filings that have to take place? I understand that Saturday they're probably going to avoid because one of the lawyers is observant and may actually have a special session on Sunday. Just walk the audience through what to expect over the next couple of days of the structure of this trial.
You're going to see a filing tomorrow, and then the trial is due to start as early as tomorrow. You're going to see statements from both sides. And as of now, there are not going to be any witnesses. So it's going to be the managers from the House. You've got Jamie Raskin, Congresswoman Plaskett, of course, the one and only Eric Swalwell, the brilliant Chinese spy lover, Eric Swalwell, who was almost the president of the United States until he placed, 22nd out of 22 Democrat candidates. Kamala Harris beat him by about 1 or 2. She was the 20th or 21st. So you have the Democrats attacking President Trump with their made by and for MSNBC video, so on and so forth. And you'll have the rebuttal, much like you would in a trial, from the defense, and then you'll have closing arguments. So that's what's going to happen. The country's going to be watching. I think you will see a lot of fire and heat from the Democrats, and I hope you'll see the same from the defense.
Boris, what's your social media? I know you're going to be following this trial closely, and you're also going to be on MSNBC, I take it, on occasions to give commentary. You were the head of the surrogate program in 2016. I know places like CNN don't want you on because you beat up the host too much. Are you going to be doing commentary on MSNBC?
I'm on tonight, Steve. 6:30, 6:35. I'll be on there with Ari Melber. We're going to have a good time. And listen, I'll give it. Ari is obviously comes from the left. He worked for John Kerry, but Ari's a smart guy, and he's somebody you could have a civil and in-depth discussion with, or a robust discussion. I think that's going to happen today at about 6:35 p.m. Eastern. So anybody tune in. Usually some fireworks there. Last time I urged him to fire his whole staff, which manufactured that nonsense video I mentioned earlier. So we'll see what happens today. You'll see me out there a lot talking about this trial, talking about the fact that it's a sham, and about the need for the MAGA movement to continue to stand tall, stay strong, and fight back, of course, peacefully and always coloring within the lines. Boris EP is my Twitter. Boris_Epshteyn, Boris_EPSHTEYN on the gram. Steve, I urge everyone to continue to be optimistic, continue to be positive, but continue to be strong. At Boris EP on Twitter, Boris_Epshteyn on the gram. God bless. Stay strong.
Thank you very much. I'll tell you what, instead of the cold, thank you, Boris. Instead of the cold open, producer, tell me when let's get Jake Tapper up in this thing, because Jake Tapper makes a personal assault on my two colleagues. And we got Jake Tapper. Let's hear Jake Tapper.
Who spread the lie and voted to undo the election. Or for Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley in the Senate. And there is already, frankly, right now, a concentrated effort by the same MAGA smear machine to whitewash it all. This week, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on Instagram Live and told her constituents and supporters and everyone else about her experience during the insurrection. Like many members of Congress and staffers and journalists and others on the Hill that day, she sought refuge in her office. Hers is in the Cannon House office building, which was briefly evacuated that day because of a bomb nearby.
I started heading back to my office, and the walk back is a considerable walk. I head back to my office. We get back in.
She relayed her personal story of someone banging on her door, scaring her.
I close the door, and I just keep hearing these bang, bang, bang.
Then she explained it turned out that person banging was a Capitol police officer.
And I come out, and this man is a Capitol police officer.
So there's a lot more to her story, but the point I want to make is that the very same bad actors in the GOP, on social media, Fox, and elsewhere, those same people took her story and twisted it. They falsely suggested that she had hid the fact that she was in her office building, not in the Capitol dome itself, even though she'd made that clear in the story. Or that the person pounding on the door was a cop, not a rioter, even though all that information came from her in that Instagram Live. It was 1 month ago this weekend that a terrorist MAGA mob fed lies for months about the election stormed the Capitol.
We're here with the and
Yeah,
elsewhere.
I need
elsewhere,
to respond immediately to that because there's
go.
multiple lies.
But you're part of the elsewhere smear machine.
So he's calling me part of the right. So Jake, your timeline is wrong, and you've gone and what he's done here is he's actually contorted the story and the timeline to fit with his version of events rather than put out what was actually said or post any of the tweets where she made false claims on Twitter. Number one, he says she took refuge in her office. Lie. She was in her office according to her own video, from 9:30 in the morning. That part where he pulled out that says, I headed back to my office and it was a long walk, that's because she went for her COVID vaccination. She went, I believe she said she went with Congresswoman Presley. So they went together.
And she was cold.
She was cold.
No, she was called after her vaccination by her chief of staff, who said, and she said, I'm great.
Right. Then
as
at
she was walking back to her office,
12:45, she was going and calling to order lunch. Right. All of this was prior to the evacuation, which was also prior to anyone banging on her door. And certainly, how long before anyone breached the Capitol?
Look, that whole thing is an embarrassment for Jake Tapper. It really is. And you can tell he's kind of embarrassed.
Bad.
You can kind of tell he's embarrassed because the clip ends and he goes, so what I'm trying to say is...
Because the staff didn't cut it right.
There's
you
a lot,
can tell
there's a lot more. There's a lot more
It's so
here,
disjointed.
and,
he didn't realize how bad it looked.
Gonna...
On paper, it looked one way. But when you see it, he goes, oh, my God, I'm going to have to sell this.
Because he hasn't internalized the timeline. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
And here's the thing. I have never sat here and said AOC said she was in the Capitol when she wasn't in the Capitol. No, what I've said is she was acting like she was seconds away from getting murdered when in reality there was
near-death experience.
There was no rioter, insurrectionist, horned shaman, or otherwise at banging on her office door.
This is why the timeline is so important. And remember, at 1 o'clock, no one had breached anything yet. So for her to imagine that someone had breached in, remember, this is before anyone has gone to the Capitol. People aren't even at the doors yet. This is why the timeline is so important. And we know that when she says, I thought people had gotten into my office, why would she be thinking that if it hadn't occurred yet?
Hey, if you're Jake Tapper, why do you do an entire segment on that?
Because you're a simp.
No.
Because you're a simp for AOC.
That's a corollary reason.
Isn't this a family show?
But what's the real reason? Why do you do a segment like that? Because you sense you're being told by your reporters or your editor-in-chief that, hey, we got a problem.
She needs air cover.
Yeah, we got a problem. We need you to go on air and fix some things for us. Didn't work.
He's a cleanup man.
Well, hold on. So what are you guys going to do about it? They're kind of wandering off, and they said you guys are just smear. You're part of the MAGA smear machine, which is the advanced guard of the MAGA terrorist machine.
Here's what I'm going to do. It's called a victory sip. Thank you, Jake Tapper.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return. We're going to get away from noise, get back to signal. We got Dr. Peter Navarro talking about the, what do they call it? Strategic patience? The strategic patience of the Biden apparatus when we return towards the CCP, when we return to War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're going to bring in Dr. Peter Navarro. Dr. Navarro, Jake Tapper went out of his way to call my two colleagues here part of the MAGA smear machine. You've had a couple of run-ins with Jake Tapper yourself. What's your assessment?
So the last time I had the run-in, it was actually a Sunday show, big Sunday show, and he kept going after me, going, "Why won't you answer the question? Answer the question." And I go, "Hey, Jake, I'm answering the question. You just don't like the answer." And it then went viral, and he basically told everybody at CNN, including every producer, Navarro's not coming back on my show. Cancel that dude. So I was Jake Tapper cool before Raheem and Jack were cool. So, I got a little street cred on this. If Jake doesn't want to hear from us, we're probably doing something right.
Okay, we got two topics I got to get to. Number one, just had Boris on. The filings are due. You're going to have a whole court case. You've seen where they say they got this massive video, Jamie Raskin production. You were the first guy actually to tell me, said, hey, Steve, if you really read their complaint, it's not a legal filing. It's a TV script. So walk folks through. Where do you think this thing heads this week? They're talking about wrapping it up by the weekend. So clearly there's going to be time to see their massive videos and everything. All the emotional part is, Raheem would say, the pathos. What do you think the president's going to – we just had a press release from the president that – from his legal team that was kind of conciliatory, I guess, to Democrats and to establishment Republicans about people working together in unity and all that. Didn't sound like president in the halcyon days of his Twitter.
Yeah.
So where do we stand right now in your perspective? Since you did the Navarro report, it's been downloaded like crazy. Your server's melted down. Everybody in the audience that hasn't gotten it has got to go to peternavarro.com and get the Navarro reports. It's all put in. All the evidence is put in one place now, and he's not even talking about Dominion voting machines. That's, you can go get that if you want to get that. Go watch the movie of Mike Lindell. But tell us what you think about the trial ahead.
All right, let me set this up with a little Groundhog Day. Today we got acquitted headline for Donald Trump. A year ago, I will predict that we're going to probably get something like that shortly again. But I got my Nats T-shirt on today. It's like, put me in, coach. Put Gates in. Let me show you what I call it the defensive Trump defense, okay? It's basically 5 bullets, and for your radio audience, I'll do it audio as well. It's like, the first is like, hey, you can't impeach a retired POTUS, okay? The second is Trump's side's going to argue the Democratic facts that they present are taken out of context. There's this whole thing, number 3, about how there's lack of synchronicity between the time he gave the speech and the times the riots happen. And then here's the buried lead, and I'm surprised you guys haven't talked much more about this. The Dems have been caught in the act planning the impeachment before January 6th. Okay, so it's like Beria in the Soviet Union is, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. Now the last bullet point is it's right out of Sherlock Holmes. It's the dog that didn't bark. It's the thing that's really annoying people in the MAGA movement. There's no mention in the complaint that the Trump people have filed about election irregularities. Never mind fraud, even election irregularities. And what can you expect? It looks like the Lindsey Graham wing, the New York portion of Mar-a-Lago has surrounded the president and convinced him to hole up in a bunker, do his rope-a-dope strategy, and at the end of it, then he can come out swinging. I think that's their argument. But here's the problem. There isn't a better opportunity he's going to have over the next 4 years to present the receipts of this case that, in fact, the 74 million people who voted for him were, in effect, defrauded. And if you don't believe me, just read Time Magazine, that conservative journal. So that's what you can expect. And it's not shaping up as the kind of picture that you and I would think is going to be a pretty one for the president.
Okay, I want to pivot now. We're burning daylight here. I want to pivot to China. The podcast this afternoon, Raheem, did you already break
It's
that?
about to go up. I had to do some post-production today.
Okay, can you talk about this breaking news on the CCP so that we can get Dr. Navarro into the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Navarro. So we've identified that Kirk Campbell, one of these kind of furniture pieces around Washington, D.C., jumps from think tank to think tank and has small bits of government work in between. He actually headlined a conference with the Chinese Communist Party effing spy chief, in the words of Hunter Biden, Patrick Ho. Now that's
Wow.
from CEFC, the China.
When was that?
That would be
When
2015,
was that,
sir.
Raheem?
2015.
Yeah. Let me give you a little background on Kurt Campbell. He's in my movie, okay? He's in the Death by China Crouching Tiger movie, yeah? It's like, here's the thing. That whole pivot to Asia, that...
Froze.
no.
Continue.
Funny timing. Always happens at the
Wow.
funniest
No.
times.
NSA has nothing to do with that, right? Kurt Campbell, though, I want to.
So he has now
Yeah.
been made Joe Biden's Asia czar.
Because he wrote the piece in Foreign Affairs
Yeah.
about their new strategy for China, correct, Jack? I mean,
Which isn't much of a new strategy.
well, it's back to here's the buzzword they're
new boss,
using.
same as the old boss.
Yeah, we're going to be super competitive. That means everybody out in the audience, every deplorable, the burden's going to get put on the workers, right? We're going to try to cut costs and compete with the Chinese. This is not about confrontation. It's not about unrestricted warfare. It's not about economic information
Steve,
warfare.
you heard the president say this, you heard Biden say this in his interview the other night, where he's talking and they said, well, what about Xi Jinping? He said, I won't do it the way Trump did it. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on international norms.
Yes.
Well, what are the kind of norms that America's elite have been pushing for internationally, right? They want this globalized free flow of people, free flow of capital.
They keep saying they have a fetish for this thing, international, the international rules-based order.
Right.
The problem is the CCP has gamed the entire system. You're
They're the
playing by the
mafia.
rules. They're the mafia. They're playing by the rules, and they're not.
Well, it may be rules-based, but who's making the rules? Right, in that scenario.
But I want to make sure people
Wait, and how
understand.
do you enforce them?
This is the point.
If there's no enforcement,
Well, you can't enforce
through
with guys like
conflict.
Kurt Campbell. Walk back through, because people might not have caught that, about Hunter Biden, who's the spy, when did he make that comment, and about Kurt Campbell.
Okay, so I literally just hit publish on the podcast episode just now. So if people were refresh after this show, refresh their podcast apps, you'll get it. Natalie Winters and I go into excruciating detail on this. Again, the story is that this guy, Kurt Campbell, who has spoken alongside, and I literally mean alongside, Patrick Ho, the CEFC guy, all these people we heard about back when the hard drive from hell came out, and we grabbed that audio. Remember the voice notes, most genius S ever, in Hunter Biden's own words, where he admits to being friends with the quote effing spy chief of
The video
China.
that Twitter took down.
Patrick Ho. They took it down.
Twitter
Everybody took it down, of course. This guy has now been made Asia czar in Joe Biden's national security apparatus. This is one of the most dangerous things. He is compromised, no doubt about it. This is one of the most dangerous things. It should be on the front page of every newspaper.
So, Dr. Navarro, tell us about Kurt Campbell, and why is it dangerous now that he's been put in charge of the China strategy?
So this is how the Washington swamp works. Essentially, there's this thing we talked about yesterday about idea laundering, which is that you have CCP money coming in, or you have multi-corporation globalist offshoring money coming into all of these think tanks around Washington. It's like Heritage, it's the Peterson Institute,
Brookings,
and all of these things. And what they do is they basically, they're salesmen. Like Kurt's the ultimate salesman, very slick guy. And he goes out and he raises a ton of money, he gets speaking fees, he funds his think tanks, they pimp out all sorts of reports and this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, all they are is salesmen for the CCP and for the multinational corporations. There's Gaffney comes to...
Okay, froze up again. Having technical problems today. You're an expert.
What he's explaining here is this is how the Chinese state, the People's Republic of China, is able to curry favor in the United States, how they're able to push for these advisors and this coterie of almost pro-CCP apparatchiks where they're essentially function as a controlled opposition, where they're pushing using these flaccid terms like rules-based international order, and we can't confront them. You even heard Biden when he's talked about Xi Jinping. Well, I don't mean this as an insult. Right?
No,
I don't want to offend.
He's not a Democrat, but I don't mean that.
Terrified to even offend the PRC, terrified to offend Xi Jinping. I don't know, who knows what he has on him and his son, the effing spy chief of China.
How feckless has Biden's interview, the 60 Minutes interview, and his whole demeanor about the CCP, given what Trump did and where we are.
You saw Joe Biden kowtow. You saw him kowtow.
That has massive implications for the future. Do you think strategic patience is appeasement here? Are you feeling appeasement given where we've come from?
I actually feel a lot worse than that, honestly. You listen not just to what Joe Biden said in the interview this weekend, but how he said it. You could hear it as nervous to even be on the subject matter. That's how terrible this situation is. And you talk about, we've got this story up, we've got the podcast up right now, people can go away and look at it. This is just one person in the entire apparatus of people who are being hurriedly appointed into these positions. It's all over the place.
Blinken had the consulting firm, Executive Way, that had
West
Chinese
Exec.
clients. West Exec. He was also tied up in the University of Pennsylvania, raising money. Hunter Biden's been compromised. Guys all over taking fees. Now you got Kirk Campbell.
Yep.
Jake Sullivan's up at Harvard at the Belfort Center. They're all in business with the Chinese Communist Party. All in business with the Chinese Communist Party. We're going to take a short break. Be back in a second. Richard Fernandez, LifeSite News, joins us.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The China hands right now are talking about how the UK has now almost kind of gotten to the position where the U.S. was a couple of months ago. It's the UK breaking bad. They said they would take 5 million passport holders from Hong Kong. The House of Lords got in to stop the Brexit deal, and so they started taking in the human rights of the Uyghurs, right? You've had this Huawei situation over there. Over the United Kingdom.
Pulled license of CGTN.
Pulled license of CGTN. They're confronting, at least partially, the Chinese Communist Party. Here we're kowtowing to the Chinese Communist, including all the great work done in the Confucius Institutes. Did that just get, is that true? Did that get reversed today?
Yeah, it does. It does look like the Biden regime has quietly nixed. In fact, it was done last week, so quiet it was, nixed the Trump executive order, which stopped, or sought to stop at least, the Confucius Institutes, these CCP propaganda fronts, propagandizing in American schools. The Biden regime is actually allowing that to happen again.
He didn't have a big signing ceremony on that one, did he?
No, he did not.
No, with his little desk.
But hold it. If you got Tony Blinken somehow up in the University of Pennsylvania, we still haven't gotten a straight, because the Republicans didn't ask any tough questions during his confirmation hearing. We still don't know what the situation with that. You got National Pulse is breaking the story on Jake Sullivan up at the Belfort Center. We still don't have a straight answer for that. Taking cash from him. He hadn't even unwind. There's not even unwinded from the company he owns in partnership with the top spy in the country, right? Who's up there at some conference with Kirk Campbell getting money, right?
They asked Psaki about his equity stake, and he says he's working on it.
Hey, he's working on it. I'm gonna get back to you. We're gonna circle back on that.
Could you imagine if that were Don Jr. in a Russian
Come
company?
on, what are you talking about?
I'm working
insane.
on it.
Look, they are totally compromised, and you can see it by the actions. Raheem Kassam nailed it. We're going to play that tomorrow. We got to do it in the evening show. I want to play how nervous he doesn't even like taking on the topic. Right. So everybody, Orange Man bad. Okay, now you got a commander in chief. We already know is at diminished mental capacities. Trust me, he is not up to being in the room with. She will bench press Joe Biden. This is absurd, and this is what's stealing this election. You know, Twitter and Google and YouTube. This is what it's got us into. And this is going to have major, major, major ramifications. Okay, I want to show you. Talk about the CCP virus. You talk about Wuhan. You talk about the science-based, data-based, evidence-based, CNN. All these guys, right? They don't want to face facts and face the reality of what happened in this PLA-controlled bioweapons lab P4 in Wuhan. Although the evidence is overwhelming. Now I want to bring in Richard Fernandez. The man back at the Belmont Club, a great blog over at PJ Media, one of the best sites out there, wrote this incredible piece about junk science of what we're living today, whether it's the vaccine. And now I just saw Facebook. If you say anything bad about the vaccines, you're going to take it off misinformation. Can't have an open debate. Tony Fauci says last week that the key to herd immunity, and we now know from their math, because he keeps watching things up, herd immunity is at 85 or 90%. They told us at first it's 60%. Now it's 85 to 90%. Just do the math. Between the people that have had it and the vaccines are going to have, you're going to have involuntary vaccinations to get to 90%, if that is what they're saying is herd immunity. And Tony Fauci says last week, the key to herd immunity is vaccination of school children. Tony Fauci's words, not mine. We've had Dr. Ryan on here and others. She kind of broke the buried lead that Moderna can't even get any parents to sign up the kids. The Biden is waving around the summary, the executive summary, the 200-page report he just did. They just put out last week. The only thing it says is that the federal government should continue research for adolescents, which they only have many of those sign up. Nothing about children. And now they're saying the key to herd immunity is vaccination of school children. Okay? And no data is put up here. Axios, the corporate, the tip sheet for the corporatists, Mike Allen and Jonathan Swan, great guys, but the tip sheet for the corporatists, they have today literally, it is high church hymnal on the greatest thing in the history of the United States has been this vaccine. Gosh, I wish they had said that during the campaign with President Trump. I wish they had said that. I wish one time they had said it. Kind of missed that. Kind of put it in February. I wish they had said that back. Actually, maybe on November 1st or 2nd. Might have helped a little bit there, Jonathan and Mike Allen.
I remember Jake Tapper actually saying after the debate that when President Trump brought it up, he said that's a lie. He said that's not coming. There will be no vaccine. The vaccine, it's impossible. It can't happen. You said that, Jake Tapper. Let's talk about your fact checks.
Lee Smith has this piece out the other day on 30 times, ties us back to history about what's going on here with the CCP in the United States. Richard Fernandez goes back in history. These are guys that get it. They can connect us back to meaningful events. Richard, I want you to expand upon the bandwagon of perdition. We've been through this exercise before about fake science. Take it from there, sir.
Well, it isn't really fake science, but science that seemed right at the time. And it was basically, the whole post was based on stuff that Michael Crichton, the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, and who was a doctor and a biologist, wrote. And it just carries the piece. Basically, it says that once upon a time, there was this subtle science called eugenics, and everyone was for it. And the big center of eugenics were all the reputable institutions. And then later on, we realized it was a bad idea. And then all of a sudden, after the Second World War, after the Nazi Association, people said, well, we really weren't eugenicists. But if you go back, people weren't really bad guys. They really thought eugenics was subtle science and everything was kosher. And what it shows is the limits to what we can know and how we ought to be really careful about social engineering and backing science with official and ideological movements.
In the piece, you also bring up another type of science that was used in Soviet agriculture, correct? That was also at the time that
yes, Lysenko.
Explain that one also.
Well, this was another thing that Crichton mentioned, which is Lysenkoism, in which this was fake science, or rather flawed science, that was pushed because it was backed by the Soviet Union, and therefore it became official. So truth can become official. About science is it can turn on a dime. If you get an experiment that falsifies the past, it's falsified like almost instantaneously. But the cycle for political science is generations. You convince Nancy Pelosi of something in her youth, and it lasts 50 years.
What do you attribute today when you look around? How things like the eugenicists were not just popular, they were getting government funding, that people were doing experiments. Do you see any analogy to the current world?
Well, the obvious analogy, one that Michael Crichton made himself, was climate change, or as it was then known, global warming. And, the problem with global warming is that it deals with something he also talks about a lot, which is complexity. And this idea, he says, that we can understand way out into the future things that take hundreds of thousands of variables to even model, is a very dangerous one. And so therefore we really can't understand the systems on this scale of complexity, but we pretend to. And therefore he mentions global warming as possibly the next eugenics. We'll find out in a few years whether we've made a big error.
That was his book back in the night. Was State of Fear? State of Fear was called thing. One of the few books that's never been made into a movie. Isn't one of the things, whether it's the eugenicists or the global warming guys that now shifted to the climate change guys, isn't it that the basics of it never really get debated, never get challenged, because either government programs getting back of it or just the spirit of the times getting back of it, and then people feel overwhelmed to kind of stand up to it, right? But in hindsight, like after World War II, people realized not only was it junk science, but it was also obviously dangerous and should have been stood up to and questioned and torn apart in academic debate earlier. Is that the biggest fear, is that people, because of the spirit of the times, are in fear of actually taking it on? And that's the thesis of Crichton's book was State of Fear, that you don't challenge these things, as they should be challenged every day. Like the vaccine, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but the vaccine should be questioned at every step of the way, to me, to just like the CCP virus. I mean, it's stunning to me. We still have these great Lancet and other people that are still talking about the wet market in Wuhan. You got the WHO guy who came out, Tedros came out on the 12th and the 14th of January and allowed the lie of the Chinese Communist Party to be amplified, saying there's no human-to-human transmission. He's going to give the graduation day ceremony. He's going to give the talk at commencement, the commencement address, I think at the Harvard School of Public Health. So isn't the big thing is that people are so fearful that they're not prepared to sit there and actually challenge what is the accepted science of the times?
Well, it's two things. It's fear of contradicting so-called settled science, and the second is fear of losing the money. And the result of this is that you get verboten questions. You get no-go areas. There are two questions that you can't ask today. One of them is, was the 2020 election fair? It may or may not have been, but you can't ask the question. And the second is, did the Wuhan virus start in a lab? If you say either of those two things, you go into territory that is really dangerous for your career. And if you've got money riding on it, you tend to be a little bit reticent.
Richard, how can people follow you on social media? Also, how they get to the Belmont Club and PJ Media, because people ought to be following your writings.
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm actually at just a second here, Richard the Cat at Twitter. And as far as PJ Media is concerned, I think it's easy to find on Google, and I'm pretty easy to find on Google. And I don't think there'll be a problem, Steve.
The Bandwagon of Perdition. It's a great piece. We're going to have it up in the live chat. We're going to have it on the site. Fantastic. Richard, thanks for joining us today. War Room Pandemic.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
He nailed it right there. You take if you say anything about the 2020 election, if you say anything about the Wuhan, look, you're in the middle of both. One's more absurd. I don't know what's more absurd. I think actually the Wuhan lab may be more absurd, because there it's just right in your grill.
Right. And so you will hear that you're not allowed to ask these questions, but at the same time, those very same people will have placards or bumper stickers that say, trust science, trust the data. They repeat this like a refrain, and yet what they're not talking about is science. What they're talking about is scientism. Science is a process of discovery and, as Richard put it, challenge. Scientism is believing and trusting what is popular. And to throw this out there, this is something that you see from a lot of nihilists, a lot of postmodernists, a lot of atheists.
Raheem, I want to go back to something this morning. You found a big buried lead. The ACLU, one of the most revered institutions on the left for over 100 years, started by pacifists and I think socialists around World War I, and you found the buried lead. This is the biggest thing out there for their claiming victory is what ACLU did.
Yeah, the ACLU has announced today that they're no longer focusing on free speech and the First Amendment. The raison d'etre. They are pivoting away to the already very crowded area of racial justice. They will seek to put their $100+ million a year budget behind the cause of racial justice.
Finally, someone. Finally, one organization in this country will be committed to racial justice.
Brave enough to do that.
It's so courageous.
It is courageous.
Stunning,
But you're right, Steve. It tells you everything you need to know about where the socialist left believes it is now. It doesn't have to care about free speech anymore. In fact, it doesn't want free speech anymore because it believes it now controls the strings of power in this country.
In fact, not just free speech. Let's be honest. They want to crush it all down. They want submission. Yep. They want controlled opposition. Anybody that's not, you're going to see a lot of controlled opposition, right? You're going to see a lot of guys.
But also remember, you can't have the racial justice stuff if you also have free speech, because the 1619 Project, you are not allowed to question that. So you can't have both of those things, and clearly they've had to make a decision. They've decided free speech ain't so great.
Okay, short commercial break. Return with the crew. What do you guys call the smear machine of the MAGA movement? The MAGA movement smear machine. They're live in the war room. Return just in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're here. That I guess I jumped on 3, 2, 1. I was a little early. I want to go about scientism quickly. CNN is saying what? Buttigieg has done what now?
Yeah, so Buttigieg mentioned this in an Axios interview yesterday, or that aired yesterday. CNN has now bricked it up now as well. Something that I've hit on, but not a lot of people have made as a headline. But he's saying now that there is in typical Buttigieg fashion, well, there's a conversation that's being had with the CDC about requiring negative. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to love it. It's a negative test for COVID-19 before you're allowed to travel or fly domestically, not just international, all domestic air travel.
You're going to have a digital passport here that's going to say who got the vaccine and who didn't get the vaccine. That's what we're going to get to, right?
Well, I think that he's
quickly.
Part of the conversation. If it's a conversation, I think he means that's going to be part of the conversation.
I mean, they're going to have a House of Lords, House of Commons here. You're going to have two different lifestyles. That's why, look, we're all for science. We want to see the studies for the adolescents about this vaccine. Let's just start showing them. If you got studies going on with adolescents, we want to see them. If you don't have them for children, or if you have them, let's see if you have them. If you don't have them, why don't you have them? How are you going to start giving the vaccine to children before you've done, I think, years of studies and tests, right? I don't know. One day they're all about data. The next day, and I want to know where Fauci, how are they deriving 85% to 90% now, or 70 to 85%? How's the goalpost keep moving on herd immunity? I would like them to come out and say, this is our definition of herd immunity. Here's how we get to the numbers. Here's the analysis that comes underneath it. Here's what we're looking for. And just do the math. How many involuntary vaccinations you're going to have.
Plus, Biden, when he was asked that very question in his interview, I've been really going through this interview, he even said that we need to start opening up before we reach herd immunity. I'm sorry, was that Donald Trump in that interview last night?
You got the CDC head saying one thing, the president saying another thing. It's totally confused. They would have a firestorm, Raheem.
Do you know, the extraordinary thing about this to me is that the reason that Fauci and all these guys are up there, the reason that we were told, hey, we got to listen to these guys, is that they've been building these contingency plans for a virus like this for 30 years. Well, if you built that, dust off the old manual, like the old laminate manual, right? Open it up and see what you said. But there doesn't seem to be this institutional knowledge that they claim is being built up for decades.
Yeah, every time that Jen Psaki or Joe Biden says, well, there wasn't a plan, we didn't get a plan, do you understand you're actually throwing the entire National Institute of Health under the bus, Dr. Fauci and everybody else there, because this is the reason they exist. Look, when it's the DOD and there's a Taiwan invasion scenario, you think the DOD is going to make it up on the fly? No, there's something called an O plan. That is why DOD planning exists. It's called the J5 department. Why doesn't the NIH? I'm sure that the NIH has this.
Of course they do.
I'm sure
they've said to us for decades, this is why they exist. We are the experts.
This is why
We've been
Dr.
working
Fauci
on this.
is the number one most paid employee of the federal government.
Here's one thing I think we got to deconstruct. The National Pulse would be great, is to take the Axios piece, which was unbelievable in its praise of this vaccine, the greatest thing since the Marshall Plan, the Trinity Project, on and on and on. Deconstruct that, because you're hearing other voices out there saying maybe not so great, right? In addition, I want to get back of Fauci's number of herd immunity, how you got to that number, and at 85 to 90%, what does it mean for people who don't want the vaccine that are going to have to get it if the country's got to get to herd immunity? And in addition, adolescents and children, because we know we can't do without that. Okay, we got to turn to the populist press. Look, you got Citizens Free Press, you got Revolver, You've got Bongino Report, National Pulse. You guys are on fire. Populist Press. Amanda, you've got some bragging rights here, although I know we're going to have a firestorm of all the other guys. The Gateway Pundit, talk about aggregators. You're the new anti-drudge, you and Citizens Free Press. And What's Finger, tell us what your analysis is showing you guys over the Populist Press. How are you guys doing?
We have been killing. Thanks for having me on, Steve, today. We have been killing it lately because people are really thriving for news that they can count on, they can trust, and a social platform that they can believe in. And that's kind of what we've replaced, especially when Drudge went left. We went right as it should be, as they were originally. So we're definitely we love and we support all the other sites, but we've been just soaring in stats through the roof since the last election. And that has a lot to do with our platform being a social platform where you can communicate on it. You can get the news all in one place rather than having to sift through multiple sites. We're giving you all the hot leading stuff you care about at one place at populist.press. So we always hope that people bookmark it and go there because we're in a social age of suppression, and we're kind of countering that.
What I love about Citizens Free Press, yourself, these aggregator sites, is that you're very competitive. You guys are on the news 24/7. Kane's over there 24/7. The one thing I love about you guys, not only do you link to all the great sites that are out there now, National Pulse, guys doing original reporting, original analysis, you also do, or we used to do at Breitbart all the time, you go find buried leads in standard, like Associated Press, New York Times, you find the buried lead, you put it up in a headline that people can't miss. So tell people, I want to make sure everybody goes there. Tell people how they get to Populist Press.
You can go to populist.press. You can also go to populistpress.com, but we recommend populist.press because sometimes populistpress.com can be a little bit difficult. But you're right about the buried lead part. There's a lot of liberal news and other mainstream news sources that they're not bringing out the actual story, and we bring that to you that you wouldn't get otherwise. And we link it. Reliable sources, none of it's fake news. It's just legit conservative news. But populist.press is where you can find us and bookmark us. And we also have one of the biggest newsletters. So please sign up for that, and we'll send you a newsletter with our leading stories. If you can't bookmark it or are on the site, but we'll keep you informed. And we're in an age where you can't be informed otherwise if you don't, go a different route from getting news from social media. So
Amanda,
really
you guys
important.
are killing over there. I want to thank you. You went up to Cheyenne, Wyoming from Denver to cover the Matt Gaetz speech.
Yes.
I want to thank you. You did a great job. The audience love you. Populist Press, Amanda Shea, the managing editor over there. Thank you so much. Raheem, is the podcast up now? Everybody's asking about this podcast.
It's
podcast
up.
Kurt Campbell,
Refresh
the new
your app,
Asia czar,
subscribe.
another guy playing with the Chinese Communist Party. What should they do?
Subscribe. It's thenationalpulse.com/podcast or just on any podcast app.
Posobiec from One America News, Raheem Kassam, National Pulse, Stephen K. Bannon. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Come back and join us in the War Room.